Hey guys, it's Dad with Dad's Guide to Adulting. I hope you're doing well and that you're having a great day. In this video, we're going to be talking about credit scores and credit reports. We're also going to be talking about the importance of increasing your credit score and of checking your credit reports regularly to make sure that they don't have any errors. These are very important things because they will determine whether or not you are able to borrow money when you need it, and also the terms on which you will be borrowing it, how much you would pay for it. So let's talk first about credit score. What's a credit score? Well, as we talked about briefly in the video about how to apply for credit, lenders and others use credit scores to determine whether you have a history of being trustworthy, whether you pay your bills on time, whether you have the ability to pay your bills, and whether they should take on the risk of lending money to you. The higher your score, the lower the risk to the lender, which means that if you have a high score and a low risk, they'll give you a good interest rate because they're not needing to charge you as much for the greater risk. So, other than lenders, who uses credit scores? I think it's important to know that. First, insurance companies. When you apply for insurance, the insurance company is going to determine how much to charge you, what the premium is for taking on the risk of giving you an insurance policy. Oftentimes, they will look at your credit score to determine, again, whether you're trustworthy and whether or not they feel comfortable providing a policy to you, and if so, at what price. Prospective employers. When you apply for jobs, your new employer may want a copy of your credit score for the same purpose. Landlords. When you apply for an apartment, oftentimes a landlord will ask for a copy of your credit report or get a credit score so they can determine whether you have a history of paying your bills, meaning your rent payments on time, or whether you've had financial troubles which make it riskier for them to take you on as a tenant. In addition, telephone and cable TV companies may also ask for a credit report for the same reason. So, who puts credit scores together and what are they based on? Credit scores are put together primarily by two companies. One is FICO. The most common thing is a FICO score, F-I-C-O. And if you're curious, that comes from the Fair Isaac Corporation, which was the company that first started that. You don't really need to know that, but you will hear the term FICO score a lot while you're handling your financial affairs. There is also a Vantage score that you will hear about from time to time. So credit scores are determined based on financial data about you that is collected by credit reporting agencies. These are also called credit bureaus. The top three of these you will hear about a lot in your life. They are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And so you can expect to hear those names over time. We'll talk about them more in a minute when we talk about credit reports. They act independently of each other, but they rely largely on the same data. Now, not every vendor or every company that you buy a product from reports their data to each one of those three companies, so they may have slightly different information, but together they have a good summary of your overall financial condition. So what is the scale, the numbers? Well, the scores range, for reasons I don't understand, from 300 to 850. The higher, the better. If you have a score below 640, that's considered bad, and you're unlikely to be able to get credit with that. From there, 640 to the upper 600s is considered fair and acceptable, not great. If you have from the upper 600s to the low 700s, that's a good credit score. Anything above 720 is considered excellent. You are usually a good risk. You want to try and get yours and maintain yours in the range of about 750 if you can do that. So what factors go into the score and how can you help increase your score over time? In order of importance, these are the factors. First off, your payment history. Do you have a history of paying your bills on time for a long period of time? If you have payments that are overdue by more than 30 days, they will be reflected on your credit report, and that's a red flag. If you have a bankruptcy, or you've had a tax lien, or a judgment entered against you by somebody who you owed money to, that's also a big negative. Another thing that lenders will look out for is whether you've had collection agencies come after you for unpaid debts. So, best way to improve your credit score is paying your bills on time every month, especially your credit card and your mortgage and anything else that gets reported to a credit reporting agency. If you need to, set up a calendar reminder for yourself. You want to avoid being sloppy and lazy and having missed deadlines, because if you do that, it really will impact your score negatively and make it harder or more expensive for you to borrow money late. You can also set up your credit card payments on your accounts, your bank accounts, for automatic payments. If you're comfortable doing that, it pays a certain amount every month. Make sure you get the minimum payment taken care of. So the second factor after payment history is what's called credit utilization. And basically what that is, it's a percentage of your debt that's available to you that you've actually used. So for example, if you have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit on it, and you have used $4,000 of that, no $4,000, your credit utilization rate for that would be 40%, 4,000 of 10,000. A very commonly used number in this area is 30% is a good number. You want to keep your credit utilization of each account below 30% if you can. That means paying your credit card down fairly regularly so you don't end up owing $8,000 on a $10,000 credit card for a long period of time. Having those kinds of higher numbers hurts your credit rating. Another way you can also increase your credit utilization score is by asking your existing credit card company to increase your limit, because obviously a ratio is based on the percentage of the limit that you use, and you can either reduce your usage or increase your limit as a way of improving that number. The third factor that they look at in credit scores is the age of your accounts. How long have you been borrowing money and paid it back? Obviously, this benefits people like me who are older because we've been doing this a long time. But don't lose heart. It's perfectly fine to start out somewhere. And even as a young adult, there are things you can do. In the video that we have on how to build credit, we'll talk about a couple ways you can start doing that early. One thing you might want to do is also keep credit cards or other credit accounts open for a period of time, even if you're not using them. If you switch credit cards and stop using the old credit card, you close out that account. What that does is it reduces the average age of your accounts. If you leave that old account open for a period of time, it increases the age of the accounts, which can increase your credit score. Obviously, though, if you're not using the credit card company, make sure that you're checking to see that nobody else is and that you're not being defrauded. Don't let an inactive account just sit there without being monitored. The fourth thing that improves your credit score is having a mix of types of credit. If you have, for example, a mortgage and a credit card, those are considered different types of credit, and the more mix you have, or the more types you have of credit in your mix, the better off you are. That does not mean, though, I don't think you should be going off and opening additional accounts just for that purpose. Another factor is the frequency of credit inquiries. And one of the things we've talked about, including in our videos on buying cars, is that when you go to borrow money from a lender, they're going to conduct an inquiry on the credit score. Now, that can either be what's called a soft inquiry or a hard inquiry. The basic difference is whether it shows up on your credit report. A hard inquiry is the one you want to try to avoid if possible. Limit those. Soft inquiries are perfectly fine. A soft inquiry may happen, for example, anytime that somebody wants to see your credit report, but you're not in a situation where you're going to be borrowing money. For example, if a new employer wants to see the report or a landlord wants to see the report, those are considered soft inquiries, and you can ask them to make sure they're soft inquiries. A hard inquiry is when you're going to go ahead and borrow money from a lender. They're definitely going to want a copy of your credit report before they do that. That's a hard inquiry. Note that checking on your score yourself, which you're entitled to do, does not create this issue. You're perfectly fine to do that. That's not considered a hard inquiry, and it won't affect your credit score. So a couple other things you can do to improve your credit score, other than those obvious ones. Number one is check your credit reports regularly and check for errors. We'll talk about that in a second, but if there are mistakes on your reports, and unfortunately they are common, those could negatively affect your score unfairly, and so you want to make sure you're checking on it. Another option you can do is to set up so that your personal bills are paid via your credit card. So for example, your telephone bill, your electric bill, your gas bill, if you can pay those off with your credit card and then immediately pay the credit card company back, that increases the dollar amounts that you are deemed to have borrowed and makes you look like a better credit risk, and it increases your credit score. Obviously, make sure you pay off the credit card quickly and on time when you do that, but that can be a helpful way to bump up your score. Another thing is if you are shopping for loans, maybe for a new car or for mortgages, try to narrow the time frame in which you do that. If you apply for multiple loans or they have multiple hard inquiries within a very narrow time frame, like the same week, the interpretation of that is that you're basically trying and comparing quotes from multiple lenders for a single loan, which is fine. If you do that over a multi-week period or spread it out over a period of time, the way that that might be interpreted is that you're trying to get money from lots of different places for lots of different reasons, which suggests that you may not be managing your money well and you may be more of a risk. There are also some specialized services that allow you to include in the credit report some of the financial activity that you have that might not otherwise show up. For example, Experian has a program called Experian Boost. Encourage you to go take a look at that. It can help improve your credit score. And for renters, there are also programs that can allow you to use your on-time payment of monthly rental charges as a means of increasing your credit score. Keep in mind that it usually takes some time to get your score to increase because of activity, and so it's important to plan this ahead of time. If you know you're going to need to borrow a large amount of money in the near future, then you should go ahead, start now, and take these steps to try and improve your credit score maybe 3-6 months down the line. All right, those are credit scores. Let's talk very briefly about credit reports, and we're not going to spend too much time on these because they're fairly straightforward. Credit report is a statement, it's a financial statement that has your credit activity, including all your payments on loans, the status of your current credit condition, prior bankruptcies, liens, etc. They are prepared by the credit reporting agencies, and as I mentioned before, the 3 top ones are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. The information that they have on those reports includes identifying information about you, your name, your birth date, your social security number, current and previous addresses. It's obviously highly confidential information, so make sure that when you get a copy of your credit report, you keep it in a secure location rather than having it laying around. It also has a summary of your credit history, who you borrowed money from, what the basic terms were, the interest rates, whether you paid it on time, the credit limits that you had, and the account balances. It'll have a list of the inquiries, the hard inquiries that we talked about a few minutes ago for people who have been asking about your credit reports. And it will have information from public records like tax liens, bankruptcies, and foreclosures. As I mentioned before, you should check your credit reports, but not be concerned if they don't have exactly the same information. Some creditors, some lenders only report to one or the other of the credit reporting bureaus. They don't always have exactly the same information. And your number will change from time to time for reasons that you probably don't even need to know. But don't worry about, if you get it 1 week and 2 months later it's slightly different, don't worry about it. So how do you get a copy of your credit report and check that it's accurate? You can get them directly from each one of the reporting agencies on their website, but there's also a service called annualcreditreport.com. The link is on our website, and you can get all 3 reports at one time. One of the things you should never do is pay for anybody else to go get your credit report. There are some services out there that try to convince you that they can get it for you. If you pay them $50 to $100, you can get it for free online. Don't pay anybody to do that. It's a good idea to check your reports probably every 6 months and correct mistakes. When you correct a mistake, make sure you submit it in writing to the relevant credit reporting bureau, so you've got a record of it, and then follow up to see if they actually fixed it. I've had circumstances in the past where I've had to follow up 3 times to get something off of my report because it was a disputed bill. Whenever there's a correction of a mistake, make sure you put it in writing so you can document that later. Finally, note that you are automatically entitled to a copy of your credit report if you are ever denied credit or a job or insurance. Then you're entitled to get a copy of the credit report to see what happened. So I know this was a little bit of a longer video on credit reports and credit scores, but I think it's an important topic. We'll see you next time. Until then, remember, you got this.